Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Any public comment before we get started? Anyone? Introduce yourself. Oh, introduce me. Sorry, that's right. I'm Rich Wolf. I'm the director of the Tinley Library. Thank you, Aaron. Totally getting into the meeting. I'm also the SWAN board president. So good morning. Any public comment before we get started? Okay. Do we have any new library directors here this morning that would like to introduce themselves? Going once, going twice? No? Okay. We'll move right on. So I need a motion, please, to approve the December quarterly meeting minutes. Do I have a motion? So moved. Thank you, Jamie. A second. Thank you. Any discussion, changes, corrections? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. We're moving right along. We're on to the SWAN board election. So Stacy's going to talk about that for us.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Stacy Whitman. I'm the director of the Eisenhower Public Library. Next week, we're going to have an online form posted on the SWAN support website, and there will be an announcement that will be sent out via SwanCom and shared in the newsletter. We'll accept self-nominations through March 24th. Once the names of those interested in running are finalized, the online voting will take place May 1st through May 19th. The results will be announced at the June quarterly meeting. There will be 2 seats available. The term of Jamie Bukovic is the one expiring, but Jim Deiters also announced that at the SWAN board meeting 2 weeks ago that his intention is to step down, and he submitted his resignation letter on Monday. The SWAN board will make a resolution at its March 17th meeting to have Jim's term made a full 3-year term. This will allow the board terms to be staggered in the 2-3-2 formation as it was intended rather than 1-3-3 as it is now. Are there any questions about that? Okay, so 2 seats open. Please self-nominate, or we will be calling you. Okay, I will be calling you. All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Stacy. All right, we are on to the budget. So I need a motion, please, to approve the F-18 budget and fee schedule.
So moved.
Thank you. And
Marie Saley, Franklin Park.
thank you. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Pierre. Okay, discussion.
You can just pop it in here. So there was a meeting we had at Oak Lawn to go over the budget. We had a lot of discussion. In the board meeting that was held after the committee, the whole meeting, we made sure to incorporate some of the changes that arose from that. But it was after this board meeting where I had the epiphany that the migration of the new 19 libraries is going to occur within the FY18 year. And so this budget needed to reflect the expenses and the accompanying revenue that comes from the Rails grant and the anticipated go-live that would occur within this fiscal year, which would then prorate membership fees for these 19 libraries. So the presentation in the quarterly differs from the board presentation, but I alerted the board that I needed to do this. They understood, and I think you all will hopefully understand. It does affect the budget in those lines where I included that. I did not really necessarily update the narrative to reflect this, but I really wanted to make sure that it was noted that we were going to have these migration expenses rather than have all these lines going over and people asking a lot of questions about it. I wanted to make sure that I had, with the best information that I have at this time, to include all that. And this is really presuming, again, we haven't even set our go-live date. If there's any 19 libraries online watching this, yes, we have not set the go-live date, but I had to just sort of make some assumptions that we would be looking at this probably around the April time period of 2018. So I'm happy to answer other questions around this budget. Otherwise, we can move forward with a formal approval, but I'll open up for discussion. And Tiffany, where are you? All right, so we've got the roll call stuff up at the front next to Joseph Miller, who's our note taker today.
Where do you want me to be?
Right in the middle. We'll go forward.
Acorn. Yes. Alsip. Yes. Bedford Park. Yes. Beecher. Bellwood. Berkeley. Berwyn. Blue Island. Ridgeview. Broadview. Brookfield. Public. Who's next? In alphabetical order. Brookfield Zoo. Yes. Ah.
There we go.
Awesome. Thank you. Calumet City. Calumet Park. Chicago Heights. Chicago Ridge. Cicero. Clarendon Hills. Crestwood. Crete. Yes. Dalton. Downers Grove. Yes. Eisenhower. Yes. Elmwood Park. Yes. Evergreen Park. Flossmoor.
Yes.
Forest Park. Frankfurt.
Yes.
Franklin Park. Yes. Glenwood Linwood. Yes. Grand Prairie. Harvey. Hillside.
Yes.
Hinsdale. Hodgkin. Yes. Homewood. Indian Prairie. Yes. Justice. LaGrange. Yes. LaGrange Park. Lansing. Lyons. McConaughey. McCook. Markham. God, it seems like there's more of you out there. Madison. No. Maywood. Melrose Park. Yes. Midlothian. Yes. Morton Arboretum. North Riverside. Yes. North Lake. Oak Lawn.
Yes.
Oak Park.
Yes.
Palos Heights. Palos Park. Park Forest. Prairie State College. Prairie Trails. Yes. Richton Park.
Yes.
River Forest. Yes. River Grove. Riverdale. Riverside. Schiller Park. South Holland. Yes. State or South Chicago Heights. Yes. Stickney Forest View. Summit. Thomas Ford. Tinley Park.
Yes.
Thornton. University Park. Westchester.
Yes.
Westmont. Yes. William Leonard. Woodridge. Yes. Worth. Oh my gosh, it's painful when you read.
Before we get rolling on the rest of the meeting, Stephen, I'll leave the microphone over here. Just a reminder, this is streaming live, so if you have questions out there, we'll have a microphone be brought over to you. So let me flip us over to my part. I didn't introduce myself for the online audience, so I made the same mistake. I'm Aaron Skog. For those of you who haven't met me before, I'm the Executive Director of SWAN. It's usually at this part of the meeting, and we've arrived at this part a lot sooner than I even expected, which is good, because I have a lot of information to share with you. I'm going to give an update on some of the activities that occurred over the last 3 months and what we're looking at over this next 3-month period. I've asked Stephen Schluitt, our IT manager, to do an overview of what has been noted, at least at the committee of the whole meeting, as the firewall replacements that need to take place and the reasons for that. But also, it's going to be very interesting for some of you that have been around, probably involved in SWAN for a while, that we have a new option for a lot of you that you'll probably want to learn about and consider. So Stephen will do an update on that. He'll also talk about the uptime of our system. And then, if there's time, and I think there'll be time, I wanted to give an update on where Cersei's Dynex is at with a lot of their new initiatives, which is under this umbrella called Blue Cloud. Blue Cloud is sort of the name for Cersei Dynex's services, where they are transitioning public interfaces over to their cloud-based system, but staff interfaces. So I think there's been a lot of questions about this, and we recently had a Cersei Dynex meeting over at Tinley Park, and not a lot of you were there, so I wanted to make sure I incorporated some of their update, just so you're able to see where things are going with their Blue Cloud services. So one of the things that we did over the last 3 months since the December meeting is we issued a communications survey, and based on those responses, we moved forward with a number of updates. This was primarily through Susan Ricker's initiative working with me. So what we have here, at least I have shared on the screen, and also I have a handout for those of you that are here at the meeting. You can see the handout. This is also available online. So this handout also really helps identify all the various user groups and committees that are in SWAN. We felt that this was important to sort of summarize this, and as we're heading towards 2017 planning, we planned all the meetings in advance and issued them as far as their dates in this document. So I think that is going to be very helpful also for the 19 libraries that are looking to become members in SWAN, that they would be able to start coming to these meetings. And for those of you that are with these 19 libraries, I've seen a few staff from Glen Ellen come to one of our discovery and user experience meetings. And by all means, feel free to start attending these. It's the opportunity for you all and for your staff in the existing membership to participate in circulation advisory or catalog advisory, the discovery user experience group. So I think this is very helpful to see it all together. We've also done a number of support site changes. We wanted to make sure that the menus were easier to understand and logically grouped. Websites are always needing to be evaluated and updated. So it had been a while when we transitioned over from the MLS website to our own standalone support website. And now a few years have gone by since we've done that. We wanted to make sure we updated that. So that support site was also updated based on survey feedback that we got from our member libraries. So there was great feedback, and we were able to just roll forward with those changes. We've done some reorganizing of our documentation page. So as you start to look at that, hopefully you're going to see things that may have been documents referencing the migration that took place over 14 to 15. You may still see some of those documents, but they're not nearly as front and center as they had been. And we'll continue to update our support site. I would say For those of you that haven't looked at it, that blog roll that we have going is a great way if you're wanting to get caught up on a few weeks or months activity. You can scroll through that and click on those postings. I think my staff are doing a great job updating that. So I just wanted to share that. We're going to continue to work with our communication strategy based on the survey. We're going to be looking at our email list. Some of the long-term things that we've heard about and have identified are things like online forums for around certain department or, let's say, software modules to allow collaboration to take place. But before we do that, I would really say get involved in these user groups. Come to that. It's great to network with your peers. I was out at Thomas Ford yesterday doing a library visit and met with their management team. Susan and I were out there. So if you're new directors, we'll reach out to you. I was out at Midlothian about 2 weeks ago, meeting with Jennifer. And if you're directors that have been members of SWAN for a while, I'm always happy to schedule a visit and we can go over. There's been a lot of changes in SWAN, and I want to make sure that everyone's familiar with what is included in your membership, what some of the things that you've heard about or updates that you're wanting to find out about, such as BookMine. But I'm going to get into some of those later on in my overview. So one of the things that we're also going to be working on is making sure that it's understood how SWAN is organized in terms of our departments and with our staff. So we really want to also emphasize our centralized support, the 800 number and the email that goes into our ticket system. But we also want to make sure that we have a lot of new staff, that you would all get to know us and understand that the staff that are in various departments and the managers in those departments could always also serve as an escalation point. So let's say you're working with our staff and maybe you're confused or you didn't like an answer that you got, that you would know easily who the manager is to be able to, kick up that inquiry to them. And I would just say that goes all the way up to me as well if you have concerns on this. So this is a mock-up of what it's going to look like. We've been looking at doing a lot of staff photos so you can see our names and faces because we work primarily behind the scenes. Or if you get to see us, it's usually at one of our committee or membership meetings. But that's something that will be coming soon. And I'm excited. And any questions about that? I think it's fun. I have to compliment Westmont. We were really inspired by your site. Yeah, you did a really nice job with introducing your staff. Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen it, check out Westmont. We've done a lot of push to get training out on Blue Cloud Analytics. Thus far, we've had just over 150 library staff, hosted 16 classes. We were holding those weekly, every Wednesday here. We were utilizing the Rails space and their laptop cart, so it could be a hands-on training event. We're looking to do the advanced analytics because we're seeing that the registration for these Wednesday classes are starting to taper off. So member service is going to be looking at doing another round of training. I'll note later on in my presentation some of what Cersei Dynex has planned for analytics with some additional data sets that aren't present that will be coming later. And that's part of the Blue Cloud system. So some of our feedback from our classes is they really liked the format of the class, and they felt like that after they went through the class, they had a really much better idea of how to use Blue Cloud. So just so you also may not be aware of it, but we did issue, member services issued, once we had the data sets that we felt like allowed us to do this, is we've transitioned 28 reports that would be something that you would have to run in the Symphony reports over to analytics. So the goal here is to eventually start moving ourselves out of the Symphony reports, reserve the Symphony reports space more for the activity that impacts acquisition libraries and some of the processing that we need to do, because that is really where I think we've seen a lot of frustration with our acquisitions libraries, is that statistics and some of the acquisitions reports that needed to be run would sometimes bump into each other. So the goal here is that as we develop and create these reports, we'll announce them, make them available. Member Services also released a series of reports to help with your IPLAR report. So if you're not aware of this, there were 6 of them made available. Checking in with a few on our library visits, they're very happy to have these reports. And every year as we have any new IPLAR reporting data, we'll update this and make sure that we have reports that will help you. We have an enterprise upgrade planned. We're announcing this date. It's March 28th this month. It's going to be in the wee hours in the morning. I shared this at the December meeting, some of the improvements that are going to come with this update, some of which will allow us to do some more of the patron editing within the My account. We may not have all that ready at that go live date of the 28th, but getting on this version allows us to start looking at this, and we'll discuss this within some of our user groups like the Circulation Advisory on maybe what fields are appropriate to be edited. One of the things that we've also wanted to make sure that we had at least noting for you is there's a feature called Symphony Requests, which is an online form within the enterprise system that allows patrons to fill out a request form, and it arrives at the library. We're going to see an update on that because we've been sort of on hold with this in that it really wasn't working well within our consortium setup, so we're looking forward to that. The biggest piece I would say is that we're going to see is that with EDS, I want to say, Joseph, are we around between 20, 25 libraries live on EDS at this stage?
I think 25, we have one more next week.
Yeah, 25 with one more going live. There's some EDS changes that are going to occur. We're making some display changes that we've worked out with feedback from our Ducks group, and those will be part of this March 28th update, but also some stability improvements that are going to come with this upgrade for EDS. So if you're a library that's been waiting because you ran into this issue, let's take a look at March 28th with your development profile. And see what you think, and then you can decide to move forward. And the My account will have like a feature, I believe this is the one that includes the ability to sort the circ history. That's something that patrons, I think, have liked from the Millennium days that they're looking for, so we'll get that. We're also planning a Symphony upgrade. Really, the Symphony upgrade has some fixes, but the main one that we're looking for is a feature that I will touch on that ties back to this pilot we've had with automatic renewals. That is the ability to have an item that's coming due and is available to be renewed, that will automatically renew it for the patron. And this will allow us to set the renewal date at the time it needs to be renewed rather than on the day that the system. And so there are some patrons, I think, that have said, I lost 3 days. We'll be able to do that. So we don't have a date yet. We're looking at the April-May period. Ducks, coming up April 6th, has been hard at work. Very excited to share this. This is a series of sessions that we're going to have hosted here in Burr Ridge. We've announced this. It's open for registration. I want to say it's about half full right now, the registration in L2. All these topics listed here were part of the brainstorming from the Ducks group. They're presenting, so library staff are coming together and collaborating with SWAN staff. We even have some help from some staff from the Magic Consortium with us on this, so we can get into some of the how enterprise works, the how stuff works. Also, I think there's been a lot of interest over the last year or so in how enterprise rooms works. And so this is going to be an overview of rooms with the intention of having classes and a rollout of how to use rooms at your library. And just in a nutshell, rooms is it's your enterprise landing page. It's the ability to add content to that and make some modifications. So let's say you're using eVanced and you want your upcoming events to display in that, you'll be able to do that. Questions about this event? Very excited about it.
Where's this being hosted?
They'll be here, and we're going to have sessions that rotate from this room over to the other two rooms that we have here, and some will repeat. So when that schedule gets put out, Susan created a handout that I believe is available in the back. We'll release this also online, but sign up for the event. The auto renewals pilot has been running over at Oak Lawn. We'll have more information to share about this once we're ready to make it available to SWAN libraries. I've included a lot of detail here in this slide, basically getting into the nuances of how it works. But really, it's that if the item is available to be renewed, it will do that. If it has hit a renewal max, it won't. If there's a hold on it, it won't renew it. So patrons get an email about this. It also includes in that email the items that it could not renew. Let's say there were a few items that it encountered that it could not because it met those criteria. It'll also list that. I believe we list that first because we found in the pilot that people were blowing by that because it was at the bottom. So we tweak these things in our pilots. So the next version of Symphony is really the requirement that we found is needed in order to really, I think, meet the concerns that we heard during our pilot. So question in the room, if you can hang on, David, while we get you the mic. Okay.
So the estimated date is April.
We're looking at probably once we get the Symphony upgrade done, our estimated availability of this will be after that Symphony upgrade. So we're looking April. Another question.
Oh, you can repeat it.
Okay, I'll repeat it.
So say if Zach at Acorn decides not to participate for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Why are you singing out Acorn?
Because it's my neighbor, that's why.
Are you aware you were going to be called out?
Would the notice then tell will the notice tell as it renews, and because if they don't renew, so obviously it wouldn't do it, will the notice let them know, the patron know it that way?
All right. So I don't want to get too far in the weeds in this because we're going to have information that's going to come out that'll explain this in its infinite detail. But basically, when SWAN went live on Symphony, we moved into that model where the checkout library is the one that defines the loan periods, and it also defines the automatic renewal. So if Acorn patron goes over to Tinley and checks out at Tinley, and he's not doing automatic renewals, but you are, it's going to automatically renew. So it is possible to have items checked out at two different libraries, one participating, one not, and have varying automatic renewals applying.
Would the notice let them know, or no? That was the
It'll just tell them it couldn't renew. It won't say your library's not participating.
This will renew.
Yeah.
No, of course. No, that's what it'll do. So they'll see it in the notes. We
So-
discussed this at a department meeting.
Circulation Advisory had a good discussion on this. They were really recommending to try to get as many libraries, once we make this available, participating in this, mostly from this reciprocal borrowing aspect. However, we recognize that it's really going to be up to the library to ultimately decide whether or not they want to do this. So when we move forward with this and explain more of the impact, how it works, potentially what we observe, let's say for fines, if it's automatically renewing, you may see that maybe you would not see as many fines potentially. So these are the sorts of things that we want to suss out before we make this available to the libraries. I will say some of the things that I think we can assume is that it will certainly cut down on the number of like overdue notices or notifications other than the email notification that goes out letting patrons know that this happened. So feedback from Oak Lawn has been that it's been very positive. We have libraries in the new 19 that are taking advantage of this service now. They've expressed concerns that, well, will we have this service available when we join SWAN? And the goal was always to get this service out. Symphony had this capability, so we wanted to take advantage of it. So we modeled a lot of this on some of the setup that Magic initially did. But so if you're part of the new 19 online, we got you covered. And for the existing membership, you'll have something soon, potentially around the April date. Other questions in the back? I'll try to repeat it, but if you wait for the mic.
If there's no email in the patrons, they just don't get a notice. Is that it?
Correct. If there's no email, the patron's not going to get noticed. They'll just automatically renew. Or not. We'll be sharing more about that. You don't feel like this is the only time you're going to find out more about it. Graphics not as good. So the fiction, nonfiction facet, I would say this is an example of like some of the, like, I don't know if you've ever encountered this where like the simplest idea ends up being the most difficult thing you've ever had to implement. Goes to Bib Services. Scott Brandwine worked his butt off to really make this happen. It really meant that we had to really take a good hard look at our bibliographic records. And it's not to say that SWAN had bad bibliographic records. It was more of a issue that bib records, even in OCLC, weren't necessarily completing all the needed detail to really make this work effectively. So what we've done is we have processes now that actually look at the new incoming bibs. So we cleaned up all the existing ones, and any new ones coming in conform to this, and this is what makes that facet work. So we got this great email just saying, I want to share my excitement and appreciation for the new fiction, nonfiction search feature enterprise. It's a dream come true. Really. So I hope you all are aware of this, and this really came about from our visits with libraries during our enterprise listing tour. Youth services staff we found are more heavy users of enterprise, and they really needed a feature like this to be able to deal with a student that and they say, well, I got to do a report on dinosaurs. And it's like, well, we need to strip out all this fiction stuff and really get them the materials they need. So other ideas, we'll keep them coming. We also have some things that we're going to be doing with Lexile. I'm not sure where we're at exactly on the date on that. I'm looking at, but Lexile reading measures is something that we're also going to have coming that will probably be welcome with library staff. But we're also learning through Ducks that Lexile is somewhat controversial. I'll just leave it. EBSCO EDS, the EDS article search, as we're calling it, is live. I think this number is from 22, Joseph just shared with me, is actually going to be 25, with maybe going up to 26. So we'll have those performance improvements coming. If you're after the 28th, let's say you're wanting to jump in, just email Joseph and we can work to get you live, or just send us a ticket. SWAN really broke the ground on this. I've said this before, but it's really something that we out with EBSCO and the ability to make this available for that home patron, that's at home that has to have access to this resource. They go to your library catalog, they do a search, they get their regular search results, and then the article search results are on their own tab, ready if they click on that. And as they go to those resources, they can click on them and have that authentication take place. So it's not like you have to worry, well, it only works if it's in the library. It works with the barcode and PIN that the patron uses to log into their My account. So we really want to streamline that and make that available. We've had webinars for library staff to explain how the Open Athens piece works, how the EBSCO admin works. And just to make clear, this isn't just for EBSCO databases. This also Gale and a number of other resources that your library might have. So my goal with this all along was to make sure that we had a tool that helped that patron tremendously, but also made it easier for library staff then to go in and check the usage. This is key, is that you'll be able to really see the usage of your resources through this service. And I'm hoping that you'll see a big uptick on this. So I don't know if the libraries that have been working with this have noticed this. So we'll probably have more to share that as we get further along with this. Questions about EDS? I'm going to grab my water. Does anyone have that flu that like wipes you out for a week? I had that last week. I'm losing my voice. We have a portfolio pilot going. This is the ability to get digital assets into enterprise. So we're evaluating this with a number of libraries right now. So we don't have a final recommendation on this. I'll just summarize this as that it's a digital asset tool, and I'll say it's sort of lightweight. I think that's the conclusion that we're reaching, is that it's good for some things, but it's probably for those of you that are looking to do a very robust implementation of digital collections, I would say that Content DM or other services are probably the ones you want to explore. However, this does have the ability to connect via some data standards to have some collections appear in enterprise. So I think there's just some, I know during my visit with Midlothian, we were talking about yearbooks and some things like that that you may have, and you want those to appear in your catalog. So you may have a very specific thing that you want to try out. So if you're interested, we'll continue to give you updates on this. We're just keeping it somewhat limited right now, just so we get our feet wet with this and evaluate it. Questions about portfolio? Gotcha. All right, so the new 19 migration. So really there's three major phases to this in its most basic way for me to talk about it. This first phase is really us doing the planning, getting ready for the Rails grant component, because the 19 libraries have the availability to participate in the Rails grant. So one of the key things that we needed to do in this first phase is start the process of going to the library and working with them to determine, are they going to be able to connect to SWAN at the standards that we have? And if not, maybe there's an upgrade that could be picked up within the grant. Phase two is where we really engage with Circe Dynix. This is where calls then occur on a weekly basis, and then that leads all the way to the circulation go live. Phase three is the bucket where we'll designate a few parts of this project that we determine that aren't necessarily within the scope of, like, let's say, phase two, that will work with that in phase three. So phase one right now, and for the new 19 libraries that maybe are listening, or for the existing membership, there's just a lot of work that we're doing behind the scenes. So our intention is that as this ramps up, we'll be utilizing library contacts that we have. We're looking to have kind of point persons at the 19 libraries to get involved. We've had a brainstorming meeting, and one of the ideas that we shared or discussed at the board level is the idea also to do like sister libraries. This idea that we'd have 19 libraries and then we'd find another library to partner with that exists in SWAN, and it could be very logical in the same geographic area, but we want to just share that idea. We thought it was a really good one. It allows these membership groups also to take place, but also then a library that's on SWAN, and maybe you want to see some of the behind-the-scenes screens that you have with your circulation staff or with acquisitions to be able to see that. So we'll be making that part of this phase one as we, get further into the planning. I will say that for the new 19 member libraries, we've added to our support site the ability to sign up for what's going to be our migration update newsletter. Anyone can sign up for this, library staff, existing library staff, but I'm really going to push for the 19 libraries, directors, staff to sign up for this. And this will be a bi-weekly newsletter that summarizes all of our activity in this project. It won't be the only communication that we'll have, but it's a promise that there'll be a regular bi-weekly communication that will go out. Questions about the 19? Susan, I'll check in with you. Is there anyone online asking questions? Nothing? All right. So you just go to our support site, and it's on the left side. There's been interest in getting a chart with a various project status. So the kind of the highlights for you. This is just also to alert you that if you look over this presentation after this meeting concludes, we've had conversations, for instance, with eResource Central, or at least vendors that we want to encourage to get an eResource Central. So the idea being other ebooks or resources that they have that they really need to focus on working with Cersei Dynamics to get those records made available to libraries. I've covered everything here. Portfolio, the Lexile mentioned. Social library we were testing out in Dux. I'll just say that this is really just something that's on hold. This is Facebook integration. We're not thrilled with the integration really that much at all. So Cersei Dynamics had a bug with it, and it's now in their bug fix team. So we'll wait for them to fix the bug and then share with you what it can do. Not too excited about it. ERM is something that we're doing. It's a new Blue Cloud tool, and we're piloting that right now with some Eisenhower staff. And I'm going to touch on where BookMind's at, especially BookMind Plus. Visibility I'm going to touch on in a moment. Pick Up Anywhere is something we went live with. We also need to get Buy It Now out. We think Buy It Now may be of interest to libraries that if you're going to consider, let's say, the auto renewals, but you're holding back because you think, well, if there's a little bit of an impact on my fines revenue, we think Buy It Now may be something for you to consider, and it allows you to partner with Amazon and have the ability, if your patrons want to, use your to actually buy anything on Amazon, and you get funds for that. And we've transitioned our notices over to Unique Management to print those. Auto renewals we touched on. SVA is out. Swipes. Okay. We have been patiently waiting, and I make this part of my monthly calls with Cersei Dynamics with my library relations manager on trying to see when the EMV chip and pin device is going to be made available. We were hearing the first half of 2017. I'm not optimistic that we're going to see it in the first half of 2017. So I've had discussions with my staff on how to move forward with this, just with the mag stripes only, and that when chip and pin becomes available, that we'll do a push to swap out the swipes for the chip and pin. So that's my promise to you. I don't have a date other than we recognize everyone's been waiting. A few of my library visits, it's been made clear that we've been holding off on making a decision on what to do with some of our credit card usage at our library. So the sooner you can get something out to us, the quicker we can evaluate and decide what it is we want to do. I know some libraries already have a credit card solution in place, like Square. I think, Sarah, you're using at your library. By all means, you can continue to use that. Once we make this available, you can decide how you want to use that in concert with an existing system that you have. An online registration we don't have as something that we feel is appropriate or ready. Oh, outreach, I skipped over that. It is interesting in that we're taking the addition of our 19 libraries, and some of those libraries are already using outreach, and partnering with those, 2 of those libraries, one from the Link group, one from the Magic group, and they're working with member services so that we can look at, let's just say, a unified approach, so that when we make this available to all the libraries' existing membership, that we're not making mistakes that we could learn from the existing libraries that are using it. So there'll be more to come on that. So in Town and Country, I believe, were the libraries that we were working with. That's it for my project overview. Steven's going to talk about firewalls. You ready?
Sure.
I'll sit down.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here to talk about the SWAN network and all the improvements that we're making to the network, which include a firewall replacement. Every one of you has a firewall that you're currently using to connect up to SWAN, and some of those are going out of date. Specifically, we've identified 6 models, and originally we had identified 19 libraries that were using these unsupported models. And when I say end of support, it's essentially Dell is no longer supporting it at all. If anything goes wrong with it, it can't be replaced under warranty. It's not receiving new updates or patches. We can't manage it through our, with the new versions of SonicWall GMS, which is a software that we use for all of your firewalls, and then we also can't it can't support modern standards in VPN connectivity and encryption. So we really want to get everything kind of up to specifications and make it future proof, to use a IT buzzword. But these are 6 sonic walls that we've identified that we need to get out of the libraries, and the idea is that we want to have this done by about fall of this year. So obviously we know everyone wants to move forward on budget planning and everything like that. So we'll be reaching out to these libraries individually. We're not going to call you out here, but just know if you have one of these, we'll be reaching out to you and we'll be looking for a replacement. So there are 2 options that we worked out, and we're really excited about these. The first one is something that we've never done before. In the past, we always said, well, SWAN has to manage your firewall. SWAN has to maintain the VPN connection. We're not going to do that. It's not an option that we have to have anymore. A lot of you have IT departments, a lot of you have IT contractors that you trust, that you want to work with, and that's perfectly fine. We encourage that. So if you have an IT department that's good with network administration, if you have a contractor that's good with network administration, let them maintain the firewall. So this is an option that we call the SWAN Self-Maintenance VPN Agreement. And it's a short, I think, 3-page agreement that just goes over the responsibility of the library. And essentially you have your library director sign off, and then we essentially hand over the keys to the firewall to your IT staff. And a few great things with this, it'll allow support for non-SonicWall. If you don't like SonicWall, if you have a great Juniper firewall, or if you really like Cisco, then you can use that existing equipment. You don't have to use the Dell SonicWalls anymore. You can manage it on your. You also no longer have to run a parallel or secondary firewall that's just for SWAN traffic. You can just run one firewall that's handling everything. And so the process requires a little bit of time and scheduling. We need to make sure that the networks match up and everything like that. But this is certainly for a lot of libraries, and we want to start reaching out to you, and we want to start doing this as kind of the main option if you like working with your IT department. You want them to have access to the firewall. If you want to continue going the route that we have for all these years previously, then we just go ahead and we propose a Sonic Wall hardware upgrade. We have the comparable models listed here. So if you have the 240, comparable model is TZ300. It's kind of interesting how they rename the models through the life cycles. So you saw that the TZs were unsupported. Now there's a new TZ that is supported. But that's Dell, that's just the way they do it. So, and these are the MSRPs for each one of these models. Right now, it looks like this is the maximum that you'd have to pay if you were just doing a standard Sonic Wall upgrade and you were having us maintain it. None of these prices include support, and that's because we support through our GMS. If you were to just go out and buy one of these and you didn't want SWAN to manage it, the price would be higher because you do have to purchase support on it. But if you're moving forward with SWAN as your support, then this is the MSRP for each of those comparable replacements. So again, those are the two options that we're going to be working out, and we want to get that project wrapped up by fall of this year. We'll be reaching out to each one of the libraries individually, but if you have any of those models, just know that we're going to probably send you an email soon, and we'll start working out a plan for migrating to a new model. Any questions on the Sonic Walls? Okay, great. And then just really quick, also the SWAN uptime report. We do this for every quarterly. And for the Symphony Workflows server, that's the one that we actually host here at the Rails building. All of our downtime was planned downtime, which is great. That's exactly the way that you want it. The longest downtime was the 26 hours that we had for the database rebuild. So that kind of took a dent out of our uptime total. For Enterprise, we did have kind of a spat of outages. And then anything that's labeled in the orange that's planned, anything that's red is unplanned. So that's kind of how you can tell the difference. The biggest issues that we've addressed with Cersei Dynix are Tomcat service crashes and kind of memory overloads. And Aaron and I had worked closely with Cersei Dynix sort of at the end of December, I think early January, to kind of work out a plan for that. And actually what they're doing is they're monitoring it more closely, so they are as attentive to the outages as we are, which they should be. And then they're also restarting our server every night at 3 a.m. You don't notice it because it goes down and comes back up so quickly that it doesn't even register on our system when it goes down. But they're doing that to kind of free up memory and to free up some processes that could be hanging from overnight processing. Okay. Any questions on that so far? All right. And just we always have the graphs to show the time. And as I said, the biggest dent that came out of our uptime was just that planned downtime, specifically the database rebuild, which affected both of them because you weren't able to log into Enterprise when we did do the database rebuild. Enterprise was up, you just couldn't get into it. Any questions? All right, I'll hand it back to Aaron.
All right. So Blue Cloud, I want to make sure that everyone heard about what's going on with Blue Cloud, and so I can at least give you a sense of where Cersei Dynix is at as our vendor that I would say has a lot of oars in the water. They're working on an entirely new staff interface that will eventually become the replacement for workflows. So library staff are probably ecstatic to hear that. The trouble with this is that workflows has been perfected. I mean, it's the wrong choice of word. Workflows has a lot of features that have incorporated a lot of library customer feedback over probably 20 years. So as the new interfaces are being built and they come online, you'll hear about these or you'll hear from us about them. But because consortia work on the whole tends to be more complex than, let's say, a simple standalone setup, some of the things like Blue Cloud circulation are released. They were released. It was released like at the end of January, but we immediately sat down and were evaluating it and saying it's just really not even ready for us to consider this. Same goes for cataloging. But that said, I want to show you how Cersei Dynamics talks about Blue Cloud. So Blue is an acronym. It's the best library user experience. The user meaning staff or patron. They have 3 areas where they've grouped their Blue Cloud services. Staff, something new. They had a different name for this at some point. If you've seen their presentation, it probably said like Marketplace. And Discovery. So I'm going to touch on a number of these pieces that SWAN will have available. Some of these also we don't have, but once they are made generally available, we'll reach out to Cersei Dynamics to begin inquiries on how to use it. So I'm going to touch on enterprise, analytics, cataloging, circulation, something called lists, acquisitions, and ERM, which is the electronic resource management, visibility, and where they're at with this mobile app and bookmine. So the enterprise roadmap, as they include this in their Blue Cloud suite, the version that we're going to be moving to at the end of this month, and then the next 2 versions, 5.0 and 5.1, they're targeting the second quarter, third quarter this year, and then 5.2 coming in the fourth quarter. With not the version that we're going to move to in March, but one of the next versions, it's either 5.0 or 5.1. The mobile theme pilot is supposed to come out with 5. This is an example of the mobile theme. It's a responsive design. I've hot linked this in my presentation, so once I make it available, you'll be able to click on that and go right to a browser. And I'm going to show you what I mean in that it's responsive and that this is what it looks like. Say it needs to adjust its display for mobile, it starts to automatically adjust to that. And you'll see that if you're really looking for it to go to smaller screen sizes, how it's able to accommodate that. So there's good news coming with this. This is one of the things that we've heard most about, that this responsive design is key in anything that we present to our public. Some of the other features that I think we would want to see, improvements around the search relevancy. We're looking at that coming around the 5.2 version. And search relevancy, as identified by Cersei Dynamics and shared with us, really requires more of the back-end components called Solar and some of the other pieces to get to the latest, greatest version so that they can really begin to improve some of the relevancy. However, I will say that we've also been doing a lot of work. We did a big push that we presented last year with mark map changes, data work. BIB services, I have to say, has been really focused on data cleanup, but also they've been doing classes on data entry for library staff that need to do brief records. And the latest class they're doing training on for library staff is how to do AV materials. So this helps us. It helps the cataloging libraries in SWAN to be able to more efficiently and quickly update anything that is a brief title. So with enterprise, we move on next to talk about analytics. So analytics we're live with. So what came in January is some bill structure. I don't think we had it at all up until that point. Am I right, Kate? We didn't have bills. Right. Part of it. So it was really, and this is part of the whole Blue Cloud rollout. I'll just say it's not that you wouldn't characterize as vaporware. They're releasing it, and as it's going out and customers are beginning to use it or evaluate it, they bring other features online. So the idea is that you're not going to necessarily have to make a full-on jump where you stop using workflows and start using the staff client. What we're hoping for is that at some point, will the Blue Cloud staff clients reach a point where we think it's appropriate for certain types of activity at your library that they should just use that and not use workflows. So after the SLUI meeting, I was emphasizing this to the Cersei Dynex staff, saying, you know, a huge win you would have would be really focusing on the staff client, Blue Cloud, to be able to really help service desk staff to be able to do a quick search and do holds and do that very efficiently and effectively. And that would just be a huge win. Rather than waiting to hammer out all these circulation modules and CAP modules, it would be great to see some improvements in this area. Acquisitions data is going to be coming in July. So as they bring more and more of our data pieces, they'll make them appear in Blue Cloud. So for the new 19 libraries, just so you, for everyone here watching online, the link libraries right now are using some older reporting tools. When they go live, they will be using Blue Cloud, and the intention is that as we train these libraries and prepare their data, is that we will train them on analytics. So the good news will be that by July, if this timetable holds up, we'll start to see the acquisitions and serials data begin to appear in analytics, and we can develop reports around that. So for the existing acquisitions libraries, we'll be able to start moving reports that you run that are more statistical in nature over to analytics. Any questions, Susan, online? Nope. All right, Blue Cloud cataloging. Here's just a screen capture of what we mean, of what it's going to look like in the staff client environment. So BIP services and our cataloging libraries have been watching and assessing our Blue Cloud cataloging. They do this periodically. So Cersei Dynex is listed in their long-term development with Blue Cloud cataloging. A lot of things that I think would be key, I would say, for SWAN, particularly with the idea of like item templates, that if there is no template right now, we want to see when that feature becomes available, we'll assess that and see whether or not this is the client that we would want to consider and rolling out to, let's say, libraries that are like the non-cataloging library, that it serves them well, it allows them to have new workflows to get their work done. So as you can see, there's, I would say, a lot of basics that just don't at this point, but are part of their development plan, such as the authority record support is needed. But this is where I would say book and spine labels, that we would see things that maybe don't work very well in workflows, that there'll be new development in the Blue Cloud cataloging client to help with this. So it may be possible, let's say, that we'll have a client version ready, that if you have staff that this is their primary activity or part of their activity, it may be better served by going into the online environment for Blue Cloud cataloging and do this there. But then your heavy lifting is maybe done by a few other staff in the workflows client. Does this make sense to everyone? That there's the opportunity to do two. Circulation was released, I want to say it was on the 27th. I know it was at that SLUI meeting that was on the 27th. This is their first version out. I think there were probably some circulation advisory members that participated in the Cersei Dynex webinar that they had on this. It's very early days with it. The first version just came out. Long-term development means that you have to be able to develop how you manage fines and fees. So clearly it's not available or ready for a consortium or library like your library to use it without this feature. But that being said, they need to get something out there and allow library staff to begin interacting with and playing with it. So this is a great opportunity for us internally with SWAN staff and with our user groups to then be able to really assess these, participate in these strategic planning partnerships that Cersei Dynix has around these new interfaces. But that said, there's a lot of long-term development that they've identified. They have not tied that to a specific release or a date, other than this is not targeted for any of these quarters yet this year, but as they release their next roadmap, and I was told this week by Cersei Dynix in about 10 days they'll be releasing a new product roadmap. And this is something that if you log into the Cersei Dynix support site, which you and your staff have the capability to log in, you would see this on the, as soon as you log in on the right-hand side, their roadmap. And I've shared in prior presentations what these roadmaps look like. And there's just really a timeline showing where some of these dot releases would be coming. Blue Cloud Lists is a new feature that they've been talking about. This is primarily an academic initiative for their academic customers. In checking in with Cersei Dynix about this, their initial pilot with some academic libraries is going to take place in September of this year. We'll see a public library version of this occur in 2018. So what they're really looking at for academic libraries is an online staff client that ties back to the enterprise interface to be able to do course lists, course readings. But eventually we're going to see features that are going to be available for public libraries to use with Blue Cloud Lists. Acquisitions is a little bit more complicated, as explained by Cersei Dynix at the SLUI meeting and to us, in that as they're developing this, and they're developing primarily with a consortium of libraries in South Australia, that over this year, that as they refine and perfect it and introduce these features within their SPP, which SWAN staff are monitoring, that this requires that once it's ready, you can't straddle the fence, so to speak. You can't do your acquisitions in workflows and then dabble in the acquisitions in Blue Cloud. It's going to have to be ready to go, and then a library that's, when we say we think it's ready, you're going to just start using it all in their new interface. It's an entirely different structure. Blue Cloud ERM. ERM tools have been around for libraries to use for a long while, primarily used in academic research libraries. It's really just a staff management tool for library staff to organize all your subscription databases in one one place, rather than dealing with spreadsheets and dealing with all your varying subscription dates. Let's say you're doing trials and you want to record all this. This tool will allow a library that wants to use ERM to then even maybe allow various departments, because sometimes these online databases are managed by maybe youth services or adult services or maybe technical services, that you'll have one place to record all this. So we reached out to Eisenhower to help us. Got in very early within this, and we're going to be getting more updates from Eisenhower with Molly on how it's going. But right away she said, I had to sit down with all these various departments to gather all this information. We said, this is the reason why this tool exists. This is not necessarily a tool that is included right now as it is in terms of just the unlimited licensing that I have with Cersei Dynex, it would require me to get quotes. Once we feel that it's ready for libraries to use, I'll gather interest and see what libraries are interested in ERM, and I'll purchase this with board approval on the licensing, and it becomes part of our annual maintenance. Questions about ERM? There's one in the back. I'll repeat your question.
Okay, I want to know if you can find usage statistics in here for all these databases.
She wants to find usage statistics in these databases. I don't know. I think so. I think you could record it, but I don't know if it's actually going to go out in query. You probably want that, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll find out. Let me make a note.
That would make it worthwhile.
Yeah. She said that would make it worthwhile for everyone online. Oh, it does say usage statistics. Well, we'll see. You want it automated, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I got to log into each individual one. That's what I'm doing now.
I would say you could see where in a university or academic where they have just like tons and tons of these that they needed a tool like this. However, I would say as we're doing more with the EDS and the need to have current information in there, I think it would be very helpful for SWAN and for library staff to have one place to record all this so that then we can make sure that as we update EDS profiles per library, that we know where to go and where to look it up. So the idea being that SWAN staff can go in and look and see and then work in concert with EBSCO and Cersei Dynex. Visibility is a progress, I'll just say that. So what is happening with visibility, SWAN has a subscription to this. It has a component where it harvests our data and uploads it into an online database that is exposed to the web through a company called Zafira. And there was probably a big push, I want to say, a year ago where Zafira was out, and Cersei Dynex partnered with Zafira to come up with this service called Visibility. Visibility has not worked well, I would say, in the consortium environment. What we're seeing, though, is that a lot of their suggested enhancements or fixes really require us to work with individual libraries, and it involves a lot of stuff that makes the internet work, which is DNS, and setting up domain names. So rather than charge ahead with 78 to 97 libraries in this, we're monitoring Houston. There's a consortia in Houston called Hallen, and how this is going for them. They're a smaller group than SWAN, and they're seeing very good improvements, I would say, with when you do a search in Google, for instance, that you're going to get more of these titles appearing in the return search results. So you'll begin to see not just that the titles show up, but also they will be more location aware. This is what was promised all along, and then we're finding that, oh, there's this whole DNS called CNAME component. Rather than dive into this and do a lot of work with your IT staff and not really get the results we want, we decided to hold back and see how it's going with a few of our neighboring partner consortium. So I will also say Magic has been working on as a group. I don't know if you've been testing this and seeing mixed results, but we're really hoping that once we find out is this worth doing, this really is going to involve reaching out to your IT staff or your IT vendors, and then there'll be very specific recommendations needed to do DNS changes. That's all I'll say about it, because it really gets pretty geeky. Blue Cloud Mobile, I'm not sure if they're rebranding this, but let's just say they're calling it Blue Cloud Mobile, but BookMine, this is basically BookMine Plus. We did an initial pilot with 3 libraries well over a year ago, had a lot of questions that came back. We passed those on to Cersei Dynex, and their roadmap was indicating that they were going to have some features and development coming, and then they announced that they're going to be scrapping the BookMine Plus as it exists, and doing development with this other company, Solus. As I say that, it sounds kind of ominous. Solus. But they're a app developer based in the UK. Cersei Dynex has issued this press release as far as their partnership. I'll just have here's a couple screen captures of how Solus has done some of their mobile apps. Cersei Dynex has indicated that they're really looking for something that they can announce in the first half of 2017. So we're monitoring this. And we're hoping that once it becomes available, we'll have the ability to sort of move forward with the pilot and then make some recommendations to our member libraries. BookMine Plus is available to all SWAN member libraries. It's not going to cost you anything more. It's more about getting the implementation done and the app posted to the various app store for Android and iOS. Questions about this? You still have BookMine that's available. It's very similar to that Library Anywhere app that you were probably subscribed to. So if you want to keep using BookMine as it is, it works well in that the libraries are listed. However, we're really looking forward to the latest and greatest from them. But here's the thing, as enterprise becomes more responsive, it's sort of going to be a toss-up being like, well, what do I get that I actually am not getting from enterprise being responsive and information I'm adding to my rooms. So this is a part of it. I've hot linked this in my presentation. These links go back to what Cersei Dynex has are called fact sheets. At least these 5 products. So they at least give you an opportunity if you wanted to click on these later and just read up on what they're doing with these. I've given you the basics of them, but just want to make sure that you're aware of that. These fact sheets are available, and on as they do more with their Blue Cloud development, that you can go to these links or bookmark these links and find out what it is that Cersei Dynex has to say. That's it. Questions about Blue Cloud in general? I hope that was helpful to this direction of their development. I'll open it up for the floor. Steven's got a mic. Questions online? All right.
I don't have a question, Aaron, but
Oh.
should I read the formal?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, and I didn't introduce myself either. I'm Tiffany Verzani, the director of Elmwood Park, and also the SWAN board secretary. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to be here today and to vote on the SWAN fiscal year 18 budget. There were 32 yes votes, 1 no, 45 people absent, and no abstentions. So the motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'm here. Ask questions. Got Steven here. You want to talk about the firewall? You like the 2 options? I bet you'd like that first option.
No cheering, really?
Yeah, I would think that would have been. Now, just to clarify, right? You don't get to keep that end-of-life one and just become a self-maintainer.
No,
that
get rid of
still
that
needs
thing.
to be replaced. Just in case you're thinking, I get to keep the old end-of-life unsupported bad encryption hardware.
That's not how it works.
That's not how it works. Okay, Rich.
The board
Come
is
on up.
going, the board's going to be reviewing the bylaws, so I just wanted to throw it out to the membership that if there is a bylaw in particular that you want us to take a look at, if you could send your recommendation to me by the 17th, it's when our board meeting is. We're just going to compile a list of everything that needs to be reviewed from the board, from the membership, and then more than likely turn it over to the bylaws committee and have them review it with then. So if you have anything, just send it over to me. My email, the easiest one, it's just rwolf with 2 Fs at tplibrary.org. So, or you can send it to Aaron and it'll get over to me as well. One way or the other, there's a couple of ways to do
My
it.
email's on the screen.
And you can find the bylaws on the support page. I looked this up on governance, and if you scroll down, you'll find the bylaws.
Nice.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
The latest bylaws are there.
Okay. Any other questions?
Announcements?
Announcements? Yes.
Okay. We'll get you a mic so everyone can hear you online too.
We're having a baseball book fest at my library on April 1st from 10 to 2 at North Riverside Library.
Rich, do you want me to touch on the fees one more time?
Oh, sure.
Come on up, Jim.
We went over, I'm Jim Dieters, I'm director of the Oak Lawn Public Library and SWAN treasurer. We went over this at the committee of the whole, but I'm just going to give you a quick reintroduction just so that you're aware how we're going with the fees. So again, we're locked in for the fees for this coming year, but then when we start up in the summer of 19, no, summer of 18 for the FY19 budget. So just in a nutshell, here's how we're looking for with the new fees committee. A couple of things. Schools, specials, academics, they'll have a different formula than the publics. There'll be some kind of base fee or rate for all the publics that, there's going to be a minimum that every public will pay. It's going to be, the formula will be based on your revenue or income versus circulation, collection, as we had it in the past. So it'll be a different way to set up the fees. And then we're hoping to get a draft out to you guys, or at least a preliminary numbers to you this spring, so that you'll have a year in advance before it gets implemented. You'll know what that's going to look like. It won't have probably the exact numbers, but you'll know the fee formula and how that will all be set up. So just wanted to touch base if you hadn't heard a lot of that stuff already. So any questions on the work on the fee formula? Yes.
Is that on? All right. Hold it.
Here, I'll get you a lapel. Hang on.
This is Pam at Woodridge. Pam at Woodridge. I would just like to say I really do question this concept of basing the fee on your revenue
Sure.
as opposed to usage.
Sure.
And I'm very concerned about that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We have gone around and around, and believe me, we've spoken about it a lot. So we've looked at the good, the bad, all that kind of stuff, and I think as a whole we've been. And there's a few people on the fees committee that are with you, and they're like, is it really good to get away from that? But as we looked at it more and more and more, it just seemed. And
Well, the concept to me seems to be that libraries that have more money are subsidizing the other libraries. And that doesn't seem to be based on usage in any way. So essentially you're paying far more for the same service.
I don't have a for that one. So
Well.
yeah. And I don't know if that's at all how I feel about it, but yeah.
The floor in that fee should help.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a floor net fee as that everyone will have to pay to be part of this consortium. So I think that will help, and we haven't figured out what that number would look like exactly yet. But that's definitely the direction that we're heading, is going it based on your income or your revenue versus using some kind of columns or
Are
pillars.
there other consortiums that do it this way?
There's a whole spectrum of ways that folks
Well,
do
are there
this.
other consortiums that do it this way?
Not that I'm aware of. It's possible.
I find it odd.
Yeah. Yeah, duly noted. Like I said, we're still digging on it, but we would like to get something back to the SWAN board within the next month or so, and then be able to give that back to you guys. So you'll have a year and ahead of time, you'll know what that fee structure is going to look like and how it'll be set up. And then I think it just gets voted on when we do the FY19 budget. The fees will be part of that as well, and the fee structure, and then the membership will vote on that. Oh.
When's the fee committee meeting next?
We don't know. We've got the doodle poll out right now, trying to figure out a day within the next week or two. Yeah, within the next week or two, we're going to be meeting again. Right now, we're pulling in that information, that data about revenue source, levy, that kind of stuff, trying to see how that would play out and how that would work. So, yeah.
I'm Carol Daw from Lincoln. I'm also on that committee, and unless I'm mistaken, nothing has been decided. We're still pulling these numbers to see if this is, we're trying to look at all scenarios to just see what is best or not. So nothing has been decided.
Well, I have it back.
Don't give it back to her. No.
Well, look, it sounds to me like this is the only option on the table.
No.
Well, that is how it's sounding. That's how it was presented.
This is what we're looking at right
Okay.
now. We've looked at a lot of other
Yeah.
ones, and we're still looking, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
No, we are.
I have libraries where I would have to go to a witness protection. If this is not going to be fair and equitable as much as possible. So we're still looking at all of this.
Yeah, I mean, we've done, as you said, we've done a lot of the scenarios using the columns and using circ and using collection and using all that. But there's a lot of use of the catalog nowadays that just we don't see those numbers based on the number of items you have or the number of checkouts you have or that kind of stuff. So to base it on use, really it didn't ever seem to make sense to us. So now we're exploring this, going at the revenue and the income and seeing how that works out. Yeah.
I'm going to yell real loud. Or do we need that? Okay.
So Jim, just can you clarify for everybody when you're talking about trying to understand usage relative to, does this have to do with the e-resources in the catalog and understanding that usage? Is that where we're getting hung up on usage?
That's part of it, for sure. I mean, the catalog gets used in so many ways these days beyond just checking things in and out and, and how many items are on your shelf and that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of other ways, and we kidded about how many times you make a phone call to SWAN to get information. We'll charge you based on that. So those kind of things, there's all different ways that SWAN and the catalog get used these days, and we just didn't think we could put a number on those things anymore like we could probably in years past. So again, we've looked at them all, and for a lot of us, it just didn't seem to make sense anymore to base it on, the 7 pillars that we had once or the 3 pillars we're using now and that kind of stuff.
I guess what I'm hearing then, though, if what you're talking about, if there's a base fee, but then does the rest of the fee that's going to go on top of that be weighted somehow? So there is a weight to usage, and there is a weight to your budget, and then those come together. Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would
could be.
agree, we couldn't go to, this is all your budget, or this is all your usage. But if there is, you're kind of going back to pillars
Exactly.
or weighted amounts
Right.
to say, this is some overall picture of what usage means to us, and then that gets whatever 5 points means $2,000 or whatever it is.
Just speaking from me personally, this isn't speaking about this committee, from the rest of them, I think it's silly then. Why would we start trying to figure out columns and trying to fill out pillars and weight them differently? Then we're just kind of getting back to what we had before to make it acceptable to everybody. So again, personally, I think that's a little wild to start weighting everything just to make it right as far as the dollar amount goes. But that's just me personally. I'd like to keep it as clean as possible.
But it's
Well, we don't know if it's going to be
Yeah.
lopsided. The whole part, wait, if you're on this committee and you see how much work we've done, we're trying to be as equitable as possible, so we're really trying to look at everything. You may say, you know what, this may not work, But we're looking at all of the different aspects of this so that we can say no stone is unturned, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I think Carol said that very well, yeah.
And this is Julie from Downers. One of the conversations at the board level talked about the base fee as kind of that base pay to play, what it would actually cost to have an automated system, rather than using weight, thinking about it in terms of what is the actual cost of having something like this, and trying to attach some base dollar amount to that for everyone.
Sure. So know that we're still, oh, Susan. Oh, no, just, no, I mean, again, we're digging into this, but this is the avenue we're exploring right now. And like we said, we'd like to get something back to the board to look at one more time to say, yeah, we like this, and then get that back to everybody in the membership in the new 19 as well, so that they have a year in advance, they know what this is going to look like and what those fees are going to be close to.
We have a comment online. Sure. It seems to me that those libraries that will be paying higher fees are those that probably have larger collections and will be lending more. It doesn't seem fair to pay more to lend more.
Yeah. Again, we'll note it, and if you would send that on to us, you know, and forward that to us. I don't have a good answer for that, though, yeah. Sure.
Rose from Chicago Ridge. We are a small library, and we are a net lending library, not borrowing library.
Sure.
And I like the idea of a base fee because the way libraries are being used is changing rapidly over time, and it's less circulation based, and it's more 24/7 libraries like eResource Central and accessing the database and articles and stuff like that from home. So the more simple, the better. Then you don't have to tweak it as much in the future.
Yeah, and Aaron was, thank you, Rose. Yeah, Aaron was wise to that, where I think at one point we said, oh, we'll make it a flat fee. You pay $10,000 or whatever to be in the consortium. Or I'm just throwing that number out there. And he said, no, it has to be probably more a percentage base fee versus a number base fee, because then you wouldn't have to adjust it year to year and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I feel like people don't think we're, you know, considering all these things, and believe me, we've considered almost every option that's out there, and we're exploring, and hopefully we can get something back to everybody this spring. No, all right, thanks.
There'll be a report that will issue with this. When we did this in 2012, there was a white paper that summarized all the work, the options explored, and how we arrived at a recommendation. So there'll be more opportunity to review this and get feedback. Last, we have an open house after this meeting. If you hope to see you, come by our new space, 800 Quail Ridge. I'd say go out to lunch and then mosey on over, and we'll see you there. So, Rich, are we done?
We're done.
You can call the meeting closed?
Close.
Rich calls it closed.
Done.